Welcome everyone to this episode of the Palmetto Guardian. I'm Sergeant Chelsea Weaver.
And I'm PFC Anna Grace Catoe.
And today we have a very special guest. I'll let him introduce himself, but before we get started, I do want to just let everybody know that if you're listening or watching, you may hear some background noise because the drill hall floor, I don't know what they're doing out there, but it's a little loud, so you may hear some stuff, but we just want to let you know beforehand. So let's just get started. If you just want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. My name is Lieutenant Christopher Wallace. I'm with McCrady's Fire and Rescue.
Awesome. Okay. So let's kind of start with your background. Before we started, we were kind of getting some information about you. So you were in the Army, the active Army, for about 10 years. Could you just give us a little synopsis of what made you want to join and like your career in that 10-year time frame?
I had, since about middle school, wanted to be actually in the Marines, and approaching my senior year, talked with a bunch of recruiters, found out about the different things the Army could guarantee versus the Marines. You're just kind of at the knees in the Marine Corps, and so I joined the Army, went to basic training at Fort Jackson, and I graduated 2 days after 9/11, and it kind of sent everything in my military career kind of spiraling. I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the military. Mm-hmm. That kind of sent me on a path. I ended up at Fort Richardson, Alaska for about 2 years. And then when they switched over to the brigade combat teams, the striker units were going up there, mm-hmm. I got involuntarily curtailed and moved to Fort Campbell. I spent the rest of my time at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. During that time, deployed to Iraq. That was kind of the main thing I remember from my time. I got injured back in 2004 outside of Mosul. Came back with medical condition, and just the rest of my career was kind of fighting between that and going back on deployment. Spent a lot of time between Mosul and QS, I guess it's QRN, Iraq. I'm probably not saying that right, but did a lot of time there. I actually officially medically retired January 10th or January 28th of 2010, and that's pretty much my military career.
Did finishing basic right after 9/11, did that impact your career at all and give you a different purpose of wanting to be a part of the military? Like, I know you said that you wanted to do it since you were younger, but did that give you some kind of pride or strive to want to do more?
I had always wanted to join the military to provide service to my country and my community. That was it. I never wanted to join the military like some people do for, college money or just because they're trying to figure out life for about 4 years, get a little bit of discipline so when they do go to college. I knew I wanted to make a career out of it from then. I just didn't know what routes I could take in the military. Looking at the recruiting videos back then, Be All You Can Be, it looked everything was infantry, so mm-hmm. you didn't really know about the different jobs in the Army. And the longer I was in, the more experience I gained, the more I learned about what you can do, and just doing the typical file your 4187 and go to different schools and everything, and just learning along the way. It was never about doing anything specifically. It was about enjoying the process and then learning as much as I could as I went through my career.
So after you left the military, did you have a plan right away of what you wanted to do? Because it sounded like you had a second to think about it since you were fighting back and forth.
Yeah, I had no plan. Like I'm coming to learn with most veterans, when they get out, we've been so ingrained in the military culture, every step of your day being planned out. You know what you're going to do. You know what your lane is. You stick to it. And I not to slander any program, they're doing the best they can, but the ACAP program at the time, getting out of the military, they taught you how to clear your final post, but I don't really think, whether it's the program or the chain of command not wanting to let people go to different appointments and things, I don't think they do a great job transitioning you back into a civilian. They know how to turn you into a soldier. They don't know how to turn you back into a civilian before sending you back. When I got out, the AW2 Army Wounded Warrior Project, they helped me with getting appointments and everything. They were real good about getting me set up with that. I still had no direction, and I figured I needed to use my GI Bill. I had already paid into it, doing the kicker into it, and saw an opportunity to go to college with my father, and so we ended up there by just sheer luck.
So what led you to becoming a firefighter? And then also, how did you end up at McCrady, of all places, to be a firefighter?
Well, like we were talking about before we got started with this, going to college with my dad, he was a real big influence in my life. And the week of final exams, he ended up in the hospital in Myrtle Beach, and he ended up passing away. And when we got home, we were going through everything, planning the funeral, and the chief of the local volunteer fire department came by explaining the stuff that Dad had paid into being a volunteer firefighter and what they were doing with the memorial ceremony there at the firefighter convention. And then going to that, I got to see that it wasn't the same, but it was similar to the camaraderie I felt in the military. And I figured that was a way for me to honor my father and have the camaraderie again that I was missing from the military. And so I started volunteering, going through classes, getting my certifications to become a firefighter. And a friend of mine that worked up here at McCrady at the time, he called and asked if I knew anybody that was looking for a job in the fire service. And at the time, I was working as an engineer for Barnwell Fire Department, and found out it was going to be a pay raise to come up here. So I was like, sure, I'll apply. I came up here and met with Chief James, and I saw that I could progress my career up here more than just being part of a more or less volunteer station.
Okay. So what's the dynamic, like a civilian fire department versus being at McCrady? Because, I mean, you guys are civilians, but you're on a military installation. So how is that different than just a typical firefighter?
The difference is, of course, with all Army regulations, DOD regulations, things like that, the fire prevention, safety, things like that are taken up a notch from what it is in the civilian sector. Working for a municipal department like at the city of Barnwell, you have more structure fires, more automobile accidents, definitely run medical calls with EMS. Well, transitioning over to McCrady is more, we'll get medical calls to assist EMS, but mainly it's helping ensure maintenance on the fire alarm systems and stuff, because the fire prevention is really pretty good on the military side of it. So it's a different dynamic, because the people we provide service for, the soldiers there at McCrady, are better trained than your average public. So when we get a medical call, they've already started the process of treating the casualty. We're there just kind of in case they need support. We can operate up to a first responder level, but most of the time some of these units out here training have combat lifesavers or combat medics. They've already got IVs started and everything. So,
So you're like, why am I even here? That's funny.
Do you guys ever get any serious calls working out at McCrady?
We do run occasionally mutual aid calls with Columbia, and we've run a few structure fires off in my time being at McCrady. Run a few structure fires off base with Columbia that had the potential to be real serious. We've in my time here, we've actually had a car fire at the DFAC there at McCrady that we responded to, and like I tell my guys on shift, there's always the potential with everything that we have at McCrady, the fuel points, different things like that, and the training evolutions that happen back at the FOBs, and having the mount site down there. There's always a chance of something medically going completely wrong that most medics on the civilian side aren't going to see those type injuries. So,
yeah, it's cool though to kind of hear this the dynamic, because there is the fire unit out there, and then there's you guys, which is separate. And so, do you guys ever collaborate or work with the fire unit that's out there, or do you guys they have their own mission and you guys have your own mission?
Since my time of being there, they've kind of had their own mission. We've had our own mission. When I first got hired on here, we had some guys that were employed with McCrady Fire, but we're also in the National Guard Fire Unit.
Oh, wow.
And so they would talk a little bit about the difference in the mission. We have the ability to work together, but we're there for, 24-hour, 48-hour shifts, whereas National Guard may or may not be there depending on what their mission is. We do share a lot with training props and being able to use each other's facilities and stuff. So we do some training together, but not as much as we probably could.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while. I know the firefighters deployed a while ago, but because the pad, I'm a part of the public affairs detachment as well on the MDay side, and our building was right next to the fire unit before we moved to the armory. And I never knew what they really did. Like, we would cover some of their training, but like on a typical drill weekend, I don't really know what they do. So maybe we'll have to have them come out and talk. But I think it's cool for people to understand that there is a difference, because I didn't know until I was a part of the public affairs attachment. Like, there is the firefighters in the National Guard, but then there's also civilians who are working there 24/7. Just like the security guards, they're civilians. Like, we don't have MPs standing out there checking IDs. Like, it's civilian security guards. So it's cool to hear the dynamic and the differences and stuff like that.
Well, as having prior service experience, it, in my mind, I can't speak for this being absolute truth, but it makes more sense to have civilians contracted out rather than having MPs at the gates or the civilian fire unit standing watch over the base. That way it frees you guys up for actually what y'all's job is, and that's defense of the state and the country. And so it takes some of that stress off. When I first came in, I remember they would task out different units to actually pull gate guard and check IDs. So you may have somebody from the Signal Corps out there, you may have some cooks out there, you may have infantry out there checking IDs, and then they don't really train you what was expected of you as a gate guard. So these guys actually have a specific job to do. And from my understanding, the fire unit there at the National Guard is taking on more of kind of like a hazmat decontamination type mission. And that's completely different than what we do with structural firefighting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I kind of want to get into the biggest part of why you were coming here. So we were talking a little bit before about fitness and health and all that. And you are a strongman competitor. So could you explain to those listening and watching, because like we were saying before, a lot of people think of just bodybuilding or powerlifting, but a lot of people don't understand strongman and what that entails. So could you kind of talk about how you got into that and what it's all about and that kind of thing?
Yeah, my strongman journey actually started kind of back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was still just a kid watching World's Strongest Man around Christmas time on TV. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, to see these guys doing incredible feats of strength, just lifting 300-pound atlas stones that just look like boulders, running with pretty much suitcases of bricks on their back, just anything you could think of is what strongman is expected to do. You're just odd objects. You may be picking up a safe, you may be picking up like a boat anchor or something like that. It's whatever looks good for the public. And like you said, most people think about either powerlifting, which is just the 3 lifts, squat, bench, and deadlift, and moving as much weight as possible in those 3 events. And then you've got bodybuilding, which is developing the muscles and making yourself look as good as possible on stage to get as big as possible, depending on what class you're competing in. And another thing that's come up here recently is like CrossFit, where it's more endurance, but they've added weights and calisthenic challenges in it and stuff. And that's kind of the way I describe strongman, is more like a CrossFit style event with a lot heavier weights.
Yeah, no, it's crazy because watching it on TV and stuff, like, it's no joke. And it's technique too. Like, you have to be able to pick up a lot of weight or move a lot of weight, but you also have to find out what's the best way for you to do it, because your height goes into play, your weight goes into play. Like, there's some guys on there that don't look like they're really big, but they can pick up 400 pounds and walk however far with it. So, I mean, it's a different beast in itself, and the crazy stuff they come up with, like the log lifts and, like you said, the atlas stones and like pulling trucks and all that. It's like, where do they come up with this stuff? Like,
yeah, it's just about seeing what the human body's capable of, and more to that, what the human mind's capable of. The body's capable of so much more than what we realize. Our mind limits that belief. As everybody that's gone through the military knows, before you become a soldier, before you go through basic, you have everything built up in your mind to what basic is going to be like. And then by the time you get about halfway through basic, you realize it's not as bad as you thought it was going to be, because your mind has developed a different understanding of what you can do. And that's the same thing with strongman, fighting to be better. Everybody keeps wanting to push the boundaries of what we're capable of. And it's gotten to the point that at the shows I'm competing at now as an amateur, the weights that we're using would have been world records back in the 80s when I first started. It's ridiculous. And to watch the pros, like you said, it's a lot of technique. You've got to have the strength behind it. Is constantly learning, and as soon as you learn one event, they're going to change it just enough to make it that much more difficult.
Of the competitions that you have competed in, whenever we were talking earlier, you were speaking about one in Ohio. Is that right? Yes,
that's the one coming up. I'm going to be competing at the Arnold Sports Festival for World's Strongest Firefighter, and we got the event list for that, and that's going to be a really interesting couple of days.
Like, what's your training program like, and how does being a firefighter, does that help? Do you feel that helps you in any type of way with competing in strongman?
Competing in strongman actually both helps and hinders me as a firefighter. There's pros and cons to it. Because I compete as a super heavyweight, which is above 300 pounds, there's a lot of stuff that I can do strength-wise that most guys I work with think is crazy. Like when we do buddy drags or something like that to get a fallen firefighter out of a building, that doesn't seem as taxing on me as it does to some of the guys, dragging a 200-pound guy with all his gear out of a building. At the same time, my endurance isn't the same as some of the smaller guys that go out and do endless miles of cardio and things like that, just because training is different. So yeah, there's pros and cons to it. It helps with the mental side of it. Realizing you're tougher than you think, you're stronger than you think. You can push past what you think, and that helps a lot with accomplishment of the mission as a firefighter. I've heard a lot of people say it in the strongman community, strength is never a weakness. So that's something that I take over from training for a strongman and then putting it into practice in the fire service when we do different training evolutions there. I try and plan out our training on a weekly basis. Just like I do any other training session I do, there's a specific goal to accomplish, and you give everything during that training session.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever, when you go to work and y'all are like sitting around, be like, oh, let's go push the fire truck down the road? Or do you like pull the fire hose? Like, do you use any of the equipment at work to like practice strongman?
I do, but it's more of just playing around with the guys.
Yeah.
I'll encourage people to give strongman training a try, because like looking at it on TV, you see all of us super heavyweights, and that's what everybody thinks about, but it is broken down into weight classes. It's broken down into male and female. Strong women are becoming the number one growing part of the sport right now. There's actually teen divisions. So strongman is for everyone, and it's a great community. It's very supportive. So I do encourage people to get involved with it, just to push and see what you can do. But yeah, we have fun with it at work. Like we got a fire hydrant prop, and I'll pick that up, or like just the rolls of 5-inch hose. We'll see who can lift it up and just put it in the bed of the truck and stuff, and it's just having fun with that.
Yeah. So is there any advice that you would give anybody, whether military, civilian, or like about fitness or getting into strongman, or like you said multiple times, like your body can do so much more than you think you're capable of, and it's a mindset thing. Like, is there any advice you would give to people about getting past that, or if they're looking to get involved in something and they're not really sure which way to go type thing as far as fitness?
Just start. There's no right way. There's no, well, I've got to be a certain level of fitness to go to a gym. I don't have to look a certain way to go to a gym. I don't have to be anything other than who I am to make myself better. You continually improve. If you push yourself 1% past your comfort zone each day, you've grown over 360% by the end of the year. So it just start where you are now. And I think another thing, the biggest thing I've seen in the fitness world, whether it's strongman, bodybuilding, powerlifting, casual, just I want to get in better shape, everybody seems to compare themselves to other people, but you're comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. You can't do that. They've been here longer than you. You can learn from them, but don't compare yourself to them.
Wow, that was powerful.
Yeah,
I love that. We need to make that a quote somewhere. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. Like, it's hard in the world we live in to not compare yourself to other people, whether it's fitness or work or school or just in anything really. So, I mean, that's really powerful that you say that, because hopefully that'll get into the minds of others and realize like you can do anything. But yeah, so I think we're going to have you come back after March, because I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to go. So we'll have to call you back in here and talk about how that went and kind of give the audience some insight on that. Well, we really appreciate you coming in. And again, hopefully we'll have you come after March so that we can talk about the competition and how it went and how you placed and all that fun stuff. And if you guys like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.